So I do want to thank everybody for coming. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So I do want to welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out on such a snowy, crummy evening. I do appreciate that. And we'll be able to go over, and I do apologize that we came out a couple of minutes late tonight. We had things to go over in executive session prior to this. So without further ado, I would like to welcome up Mr. McDaid to start our presentation on the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. I see a lot of familiar faces here from the last few years. A lot of the same people coming to these budget meetings. So you're going to see a lot of the same things that you've seen in the past. However, tonight is the first night of 4 budget meetings. One of the things I want to discuss first tonight is, in the past, we've had a meeting here where we've discussed revenue and capital, and then not till the next board meeting was anything else discussed. What I'm proud to say is what we're going to be doing on February 27th at 3:30 in the boardroom. We'll be having another meeting where we can discuss anything that was missed tonight. Like a lot of times we have these meetings and everybody starts thinking, okay, there was a certain question I could have asked and didn't ask. Well, the next time we're going to have a budget meeting. There we go. The first one's going to be February 27th, Wednesday, February 27th in the boardroom. It's not on that calendar yet, but it will be printed. It's going to be at 3:30 after school. Now, one of the other good things is then the next board meeting is 2 weeks later. And at that board meeting, we'll be discussing the admin and the program portions of the budget. Once again, 2 weeks later, then on March 26th, we'll have another meeting in the boardroom of the residents and of the budget committee for questions and recommendations or ideas that maybe you thought of that you didn't think of at that board meeting that can also be discussed then. And then we continue to go through the normal process. We will then have the next board meeting where the budget will then be adopted in April. We'll have the budget hearing in May. And then on May 21st, we'll have the budget vote. So, get started. So what is it? How does the budget process work? Well, it all begins with the Board of Education, Superintendent, Central Office. We review all the new state mandates, the new laws, new regulations that we have to do each year. What happens next? We also then review the state aid from the governor. The governor gives us his first proposal in January. We use that government proposal to also look at the tax cap, and we look to see how much money we're going to be able to utilize to fund the upcoming budget. Then, once we get that, we have meetings, constant meetings between all the administrative staff and the principals to discuss the needs and the requirements of the students. And we go through a whole process and we develop a budget. Line by line, we come up with all the different numbers in regard to the program, the staffing, and all the different facility needs. Too far away. Yeah, it's okay. So what happens again, we then review all the different budgets that are given by the principals and the different staff. We develop a draft budget that's given to the board for review. And then we come here. We come to this meeting tonight, and like tonight is going to be, like we said, revenue and the capital portions. For everyone who has already signed up to be on the budget committee, you have received for the first time beforehand a copy of the revenue portion of it, as well as the capital portion that will be discussed tonight, a line-by-line review of it. Also, you'll see whoever's not on the budget committee that didn't get it beforehand, another copy is available at the desk over there. And for anyone listening at home that's not here tonight, another copy will be on the website tomorrow morning, as well as a copy of this presentation. So what actually impacts the expenditures when we're doing the budget? We have to look at the instructional programs, the needs and the requirements of the students. Enrollment's another big issue. You know, it's been an issue for the past couple of years. Enrollment has gone up and it's gone down. So we have to see how many classes of each grade is required and necessary. We have to look at all the needs for the buildings, the grounds, as well as all of the unfunded mandates that we do each year. One of the other things that is also a big component of it, as we discuss each and every year, is benefits. You know, TRS, ERS. We were lucky this year, TRS, you'll see during the presentation next time, because TRS is really not affected for the capital portion of it, is going down a little bit. So we had a nice savings this year that helped fund the budget for this year. You know, it's one of my bad habits that I have, so thank you. TRS is Teacher Retirement System. ERS is Employee Retirement System. It's the pension program for the state employees. Like I said, this year we're lucky enough, both are going down a little bit, so it's reflected in the budget. Unfortunately, next year could be more of an issue, because what happens with TRS and ERS, they look at a 5-year period in regard to basically the stock market. And what's happening is year 5 that's coming off for next year was a nice big year of returns. And this past year, year to year, was a lot lower. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen in that for next year. We could see another big hike. And one of the reasons why I'm bringing that up now is you'll see that the governor's proposal goes to his desk every year, a TRS reserve, Teachers Retirement System Reserve. What exactly is that for? A Teacher Retirement System Reserve would be for just that. For the specific years that it jumps up a lot, that you're able to fund the budget through the reserve to allocate for that increase. We don't have that ability now. So hypothetically, if, what was it, I think 5 years ago we had a huge increase in TRS. If that was to happen again, we'd have to find that money someplace else in the budget, which when we've been doing for the past few years, as you'll see, year to year, budgets are getting tighter and tighter. As I stated earlier, we have unfunded mandates. The unfunded mandates are things that the state and federal government requires us to do for our students that we don't get compensation for, that we have to find in the budget itself. The state doesn't give any additional aid for these things. And there's numerous things in regard to that. You have the special ed services and placements. You have all the ENL, which is, I said it on purpose because the acronym is not up there. ENL, I said it wrong for all that. ELL, which is English Language Learners Instructions. All those L's are difficult for me. Professional development, which is required for all the staff, as well as AIS and RTI, which is Academic Intervention Services and Response to Intervention. We're required to give certain services to students to make sure that they succeed. That's a cost associated with it. It's another salary for these services. DASA, which is Dignity for All Students Act, which is in regard to any anti-bullying and things along those lines. One of the big ones is the auditing services. We're required to have external audits, claims audits each year, which costs money. You'll see that next budget meeting where the different costs are associated with that we have to do regardless of whether we want to or not, and there's a cost associated with that. One good thing is that our audits have been spotless the past few years, which is nice. So, you know, you're paying for it, but they're actually coming back and showing that we're doing the right things we're supposed to do. One of the important things is, one of the ones that we didn't have to pay for was when the state came in last year. The state audited our entire program for the business department as well as the school, and we came out with a clean audit. One of the few clean audits that anyone has in Nassau, Suffolk, or in all of New York. And it's one of the things that we're very proud of, because most of the times when the state comes in, they're looking for something. They're looking to find something. The state comes in, they look at your financials. They want to find that you're not spending all your money, that you're hoarding reserves, if you want to say it that way. We're one of the few districts that, when they came in and they looked at it, spotless. So we're very proud of that. The board has done a wonderful job over the past few years in regard to the fiscal responsibility of the district.
I just wanted to add something about unfunded mandates. There were only 8 up there, but realistically there has to be hundreds that we deal with on an annual basis, and they just keep coming. It's not like they come and we get to take some off the list. And part of the problem is learning how to fit all of these unfunded mandates into your budget and ensure that you are in compliance with them. So what we did was we just took a sampling of them, but they continuously come to us. Mental health, for example, the new mandates coming down with that, curriculum-wise as well as personnel-wise. So, and the state is consistently doing this to school districts without saying, and here's $1 million to do it. or here's $500,000 to do it. They don't attach that to it. And that's the really big issue when it comes to the unfunded or underfunded. So when we get our state aid, we're thinking that's going to help us, but that comes in underfunded for us many a times. And you'll get to those percentages with the number of students in Long Island and how that pertains to it. Ms. Kate. Provides so many hours. We meet the mandate. I believe that it's 100 and over how many years?
100
Per employee, 100 hours.
over a period of years.
Yeah, when they start, and I think that it's a 5-year.
5 years.
So that's like 20 hours a year. Well, a certain number have to be for ELL, English Language Learner instruction. But we also, in addition to the professional development that the teachers may get to meet their 100 hours, we as a district have to give professional development in things like CPR. We have to do additional things for safety reasons. So sometimes that doesn't even go into that 100 hours when they're going for their permanent certification under New York State. I think it's 5 years, right?
Yeah, it depends upon the type of certification a teacher has. The professional certification is a teacher who became what we knew as permanent after 2008.
Well, that is
Depends.
one route. Some of it comes out of our general budget. Some of it is
Teacher center
provided by the
grant.
teacher center. So there's various forms of providing the funding for that.
Yes.
Because we have to train our employees in it, and that's a mandate. So we have to bring in a presenter so they can be certified to do that. Any self-guided? Yeah. Well, we do that for our global compliance. There are certain things that we do have to provide, such as sexual harassment training, and we do that through a video, but that's a service that we buy, the video. We purchase the service through BOCES to provide the videos, which is less expensive, but it's still an expense. So, yeah.
Yes.
For the special ed services and, mandates, the state and federal, you get nothing for services like for children or any, like?
There's a threshold, if a particular student services cross that threshold, the state gives a percentage of the difference between what is spent and the threshold, so it's underfunded.
So it's unfunded. Is there ways to reach out to get more money somehow?
It's a formula.
Yeah,
It's formula based.
Just so I understand, this is, so these unfunded and underfunded mandates are not anything any other school district in New York State is dealing with. It's not like other school districts are getting money for this and we're not.
No,
Correct.
no, this
No,
is
everyone's dealing with the same
among
problems.
superintendents
Absolutely.
across the state, is how are we going to, oh, that sounds great, how are we going to pay for it? That's what it is.
Because the state is putting out.
Oh, yeah, oh, absolutely.
They're not helping
They're not
you out.
funding it.
Absolutely.
Right, it must be nice to just sit up there and come up with great ideas and say, do this, do this.
Even New York public schools, or is it a little different?
Well, they're part of the, right, they usually get more funding.
Yeah, they do.
Right. So they might be, we get more unfunded, they might be more underfunded.
And just to piggyback that, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit then for a second. No, staying with this
yeah.
topic. We're going to be discussing revenue later on in regard to state aid and things along those lines. One of the things that has come up recently is the state aid that Long Island actually receives. Long Island has 17% of all students in all of New York State. 17%. We receive 12% of the state aid. Okay, so Long Island is not receiving its fair share. We have more students, we're spending more money up to Albany, but they're not giving it back to us. they're only sending us 12% of the state aid, okay? Well, we have 17% of the students. And it's very important because now, hypothetically, because I just had a conference the other day with the superintendents, they went through this whole financial form, and the one thing they kept saying was, remember the number 17, remember the number 17, because that's our population, and remember the number 12, we're only receiving 12% of the aid. And why is that important? One of the charts that they said at the conference was, let's say hypothetically they went from 12% to 13%. That would actually mean if everyone got the money equally, going from 12 to 13%, would be an additional $1 million per district. Think about that for us for a second. Imagine if we were able to receive an additional $1 million from the state, just going to 13%. Now imagine if you went up to 17%. But, so that's one of the things we're fighting with the legislators. We're going to the legislators all the time. You ask us what we do. That's one of the things that we do. We're talking to the legislators, telling them, all we want is our fair share. We're not asking for anything more.
Tom, how is that number figured out? How is the percentage figured out?
The state. The state.
The state doesn't do it by population.
No. They're not and they're also not doing it by money we're spending up there either. You know, so we're sending more money up there, and they're giving us less back. Okay? So all we're asking for is our fair share. So I jumped a little bit from the revenue aspect, but I wanted to answer your question before in regard to that. So that's what we're looking for. That's what we try to do. Yes.
Along those lines, obviously our hands are tied associated with that. What would you recommend committee members or MRLs if they were interested in finding out more about this or doing something about that? What avenues do we have?
One of the things they can do, they can contact me. I can point them in the right direction in regard to who to contact and who to send letters to in regard to just requesting that Long Island, North Merrick gets their fair share. So they can contact me, and what I'm looking to do is to get additional information in regard to it that will also put on the website at some point. So just more information out there, more avenues in regard to possibly getting more revenue. That's one of the ways we can possibly do it. Yes.
What does drive the state aid? Because I actually looked online and there was like a 32-page handbook on state aid with formulas.
Yes.
So can you briefly summarize, like, are there 3 factors that drive?
Certain things that,
state aid?
one of the main factors that drives it is the combined wealth ratio. The combined wealth ratio, the average for New York is 1.0. Anything above that, you're rich. Anything below that, you're not as rich. Okay, we are 0.9 something, so we're a little bit below in North Merrick. So we tend to get a little bit more than maybe some of our neighbors because of that, formula-based wise. So when Mr. Murphy, Dr. Murphy was discussing, you are a doctor, right? Sorry, was discussing that earlier about the percentages, about what we have to reach, they take that into consideration. So that is one of the things.
Can I just say something? You know, we had a shortfall, and I know you know this. Paul said it's a shortfall, and he said one of the biggest of look for certain areas to be cut, and it's infrastructure and education. And Long Island, we always say we don't get our fair share, but I am fearful it's going to be much less if he has already publicly stated education's on the chopping block. So, you know, obviously I would write to everybody, but it looks bleak.
Not only does it look bleak in regard to what we've already received, and I'll show you the state aid numbers when we get to, I'll get to you right after this. I'll show you the state aid numbers when we get to the next slide. The governor's already starting the campaign trail in regard to it. When you saw in Newsday about a week and a half ago that, what was it, $2.8 billion less in revenue?
Yeah, 2.3 billion.
2 point something, less revenue. Thank you, Mr. Figowski. Less revenue. So he's already saying he's got less revenue. So now we're going to be asking for more money. He's going to say, I don't have the revenue to do it. So I'm not too hopeful that the numbers that you already see here now, state aid-wise, are really going to go up much. We're going to try. And that's all we can really do at this point. So to get along, looking around here, just about everyone's seen this slide before. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about you. I apologize.
So in regards to like the new tax law that we're now going to play, how is that impacting or going to affect, you know, budgets from there on? As we know, like the state local tax in Long Island, SALT, how those things, how those budgets are going to affect, you know, property taxes as well as the next you're going to play the taxes in regards to the education in schools.
Well, what's going to happen, those aspects is the next avenue of the taxes. It's not going to affect as much here because we've already have the formula base for the tax cap formula, which I'll be discussing earlier. The salt tax that you're discussing is in regard to if you pay over a certain amount of taxes, you're not going to receive, I think it's over after $10,000, something along those lines. So from our standpoint, that's not going to affect what we're discussing here, but it is going to affect making sure that we stay under the tax cap maximum each year. And that's one of the things the board has done each year, that the tax cap has been involved here. Because one of the good things about also staying under the tax cap formula, and this goes in line with some of the other laws, is you receive a tax rebate. As long as the district stays under the tax cap maximum, the government will give you a check in regard to a percentage of your increase. And each of these past years, everyone should have received a check from the state in regard to that. So now the three components of the budget. Like I said, today we're here to discuss the capital portion. The other two are the admin and the program portion of the budget that will be discussed at the next board meeting. Real quick overview, we'll discuss more of the admin portion next week, next board meeting. But in the admin, it's basically all the expenses related to the Board of Education, central office, finance, legal, BOCES, all the different insurances to run the district, as well as professional development and the benefits associated with the employee staffs who are classified under the admin portion of it. The program is always the big one. That's the nuts and bolts of the district. That's all the programs we're providing to the students. It's all the teaching staff, all the transportation, as well as all the different activities associated with that. Once again, that'll be another one that will go more in depth at the next budget meeting in March. Tonight, we will be discussing the capital portion, which is the operation and maintenance of the plant. All the custodians, just a shout out to the custodians today. They did a phenomenal job to make sure that tonight we were ready to have this budget meeting. They were out there shoveling, putting the salt down, so I just want to say thank you to them. They did a phenomenal job to make sure that not only school was ready for the kids for dismissal today, but also to make sure to bring everybody back here to see us here tonight for this budget meeting. So thank you for that. It's also the lease and purchase of equipment associated with that, the debt service, the bond, as well as the benefits associated with it. So here we go, 19 to 20 budget information. What are the goals? The goals are the same goals that we've been doing for the past few years. We want to make sure that we provide the most financially responsible budget, staying under the tax cap and maintaining and enhancing all programs for the district. One of the new things that has happened this past year, and we're going to try to continue, as you'll see, is security. We're trying to do as much security as possible and make sure that everyone's safe. Between the guards as well as the vestibules that you've seen, you might have seen when you were coming in today or going to one of the buildings, you'll see those vestibules. One of the things we're also trying to do is make sure that technology is there for the students. Technology is one of the keys to the education. We want to make sure that they have the Chromebooks, the smart boards, everything that's needed technology-wise to help enhance this curriculum. Once again, it's another thing we'll go back through in March. Like I said before, we want to continue to strengthen curriculum development, maintain class sizes, enhance facilities, and continue to petition outside sources of revenue. One of the things we tried to do is we look at all different grants. We look at writing in regard to getting additional state aid, and if you're lucky enough, for donations. So we're here today in February, budget votes in May, we adopt in April. There's still a lot of time from today to then, and there's still many, many unknowns in regard to the budget itself. We still don't know what the final state aid numbers are going to be. We're hopeful to get more money, but I've already gave you the doom and gloom speech already. I'm not hopeful for it. I got my fingers crossed. We'll see what happens with that. We don't know that the LIPA pilots is still an issue each year. Okay, they're still trying to figure out the exact formula in regard to what we're receiving. One of the good things is that we did receive more, and you'll see in the projections for next year that there actually is going to be an increase in the pilots. The reason why it's good for the taxpayers, the more money we receive in pilots is less money that goes to the tax base for the Class 1 homeowners. Unknown insurance premiums increases and participation increases. One of the things that's going on now is all the different insurances we need in regard to cyber, the health insurance that keeps going up. We also have for the building and maintenance, and also workers' comp. Workers' comp is one of the big ones that we also have here. You know, that's the insurance for when a person gets injured at work. So it's one of the things that we've also been increasing on us that we're trying to maintain. Final student enrollment, you won't know that till the end. If all of a sudden a mass of students enroll from now to then, whether it means needing another class for the following year, as well as if a student comes in with some type of special needs or needs to go to another facility, there's different costs associated with that. Things like that we don't know right now, but we're working on the budget as is and projections in regard to that. And the same thing with classified students and ENL, which once again, I'll try to say it right this time, English language learners. So here we go, revenue. What is the revenue for the district? First, I did the colors again. I hope it works this time, this year. I did yellow again, sorry. But that's light, so that's okay. Property taxes is the main source of revenue, unfortunately, for the district. You'll see the chart later on, exactly the percentage of property taxes, about 70-something% of the budget. The pilots, which is in yellow, but it's a darker yellow this year, so hopefully it's a little better than last year's. Pilots, just because I do it all the time, payment in lieu of taxes. And typically right now, our only pilot that we have is the Lightwood facilities. Long Island Power Authority, in case you think about that. State aid is the other avenue of revenue. And the other avenue is donations, E-rate that we were receiving that's now coming out, tuition students that are in the district, things along those lines, but we'll go through all that. And I color-coded, as you'll see on the next slide, exactly which everything is. And then the use of reserves and fund balance. So now, First Avenue. We were discussing revenue. First thing is the property tax report card, which is, the property tax cap maximum, which is a formula base that we have no control over. The government gives us the formula and we just plug in the numbers. So how does it work? First thing, you take the levy from last year, and then the government gives you a tax-base growth factor rate that you times by last year. What is the tax-base growth factor rate? That's new construction. That's basically improvements to buildings and houses in the area. So the more improvement in the area, the higher that's going to be. If there's not as much improvement or construction being done, that number will be lower. The state gives us that number. We have no control over that. So you take that and times it by last year's tax-based growth. You then take the pilots from last year and add it all in. Okay? You subtract out the prior year's exemptions. The exemptions is in regard to the debt service and capital projects that we do that we'll fully describe again later on. So you subtract that out. Then you times it by the allowable growth factor, CPI 2%. Now, once again, we say it every year. The common misconception in regard to the tax cap is right here is it's 2%, 2%, 2%. The 2% number is only when it's related to the growth factor. The 2% is what's going to be times the remaining appropriations. What happens is if the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, is over 2, and I think this past year was like 2-something, the max it can be is 2%. However, in past years, let's see, I'd say 3 of the past 5 years, it was below 2%. We were timesing it by 1.25, I think. It was a lot less. So then you take that, and it leaves us with 23 million. Oh, sorry. 23 million. You then subtract out the pilots that you're anticipating receiving for the next year from the levy. Okay? We're anticipating an increase of almost $10,000 in the life of pilots for next year. So you subtract that out, and that leaves you with 22,843,000. You add in the current exemptions for the levy, which we'll go over on the next slide. So it comes to the formula of the maximum that we can actually go out for the levy for next year is a 3.41 increase. So what are the exemptions for next year? The first thing you have to do is you add all the capital exclusions, and that is the bond payment, the bond principal, and the bond interest payment. Sorry. Apologize. I know. Trigger happy here. subtract out the building aid that we're receiving from the government in regard to the bond, which is an increase over last year. And then we're going to subtract out also the remaining debt service fund that we have left from the bond when we first received the bond. So we subtract that all out from the exclusions, it leaves you with a total of 693, 466 of exclusions. So what does all this mean? The maximum legal amount that the North American School District can actually go out is $23,536,579, which is an increase of $775,313, which is once again is a 3.41% increase. That would be the maximum. If the district went above that, you would be required to get a budget vote of supermajority to pierce the cap. That would be piercing the cap. The district here has not done that since I've been here or ever since it's been around, as far as I'm aware. The next avenue of revenue is reserves. And this is an important thing because everyone's always talking about the reserve, what's going on with it. You have so much money in reserves, let's just use all your reserves, to help fund the budget. Well, this is the reserve balance of our audited financials at the end of last school year. Okay, I have different colors up here, red, blue, and black. Red is all your restricted reserves. And the restricted reserves are your unemployment reserve, ERS, which is Employee Retirement System, Insurance Reserve, EBLAR, which is the Employee Benefits Accrued Liability Reserve, as well as the Capital Reserve. Each of those can only be used for those purposes. So what will happen is, for unemployment, the budget for unemployment is about $30,000 for next year. We're allocating $30,000 from the reserve next year to cover that. So dollar for dollar, we are using that reserve. So that's the maximum we're able to use it. If I wanted to use more money from that, we cannot because we're only expensing $30,000 from it. The next thing is ERS reserve. Once again, dollar for dollar. The expense line in the budget will be the exact amount that we use from the reserve. That's what we did, planning on doing this year, and what's been done for numerous years, long before I even got here. That's what's been continually done with the budget. The insurance reserve is in case there's an insurance matter that's not covered by insurance, where we have money set aside to be able to cover that. That's stayed the same the past few years. We've been lucky enough not have to use that. Excuse me?
What would the example be that's not covered with
If there was a lawsuit against the district that we find out later on was something that was not covered, that would be under that. Yes. Yes, correct.
ESR, what is that?
That is the, how do you say it? It's the limit that you have to reach before the insurance kicks in.
That's the SIR?
SIR.
That's it?
No, that's not the SIR.
It's almost like a, you have insurance, and then you take your deductible, so the district and board has a deductible with their insurance company in case they get sued, so that has to that comes out of the taxes, and once that's met, the insurance.
But this insurance, this reserve is more for something that, say if something happened on district property that all of a sudden is not covered by insurance at all. That's what that reserve would be used for. Okay.
If you don't use the discrepancy,
I can't use that for something else, unfortunately.
who determines the figure?
That hasn't been touched in a number of years, so it's just increased interest-wise a couple of thousand each year.
But we're not putting a discount.
Excuse me?
Do we get the benefit of the interest?
It goes into the reserve for the interest aspect of it, because it's allocated towards that. One of the other things with this, to further explain this, is online you will see we have a reserve plan that details almost everything I'm saying right now, line by line in regard to how each of these reserves was established, the purpose for each of these reserves, which we're discussing now, how it's funded, and how it can be used, and what we're anticipating doing with each of them.
And just to clarify, in case there was a lawsuit, the money to cover the SIR wouldn't come from fresh taxpayer funds, it would go into the difference in reserve.
No, not for the SIR. I apologize, not for the SIR.
Okay. Why is that not in the reserve?
Because the way the reserves are set up for the state has certain mandates in regard to how we're actually able to utilize the reserves. That's
So
why.
even though we have $1.9 million in the ERS
winds up happening is, okay, you can't use that reserve for that. There's certain times at the beginning of the year that the district can take money out of the reserve and put it into a different reserve. So there's only certain time frames that you're actually able to do that. So right now it's in there, and when it's in there, for the remainder of the year, it can only be used for that particular purpose.
Is there a way to petition to take money out? If you wanted to lower it to from 1.9 to 1.4 and use the extra $500,000 to allocate to the budget, you can do that?
We're already allocating that $500,000 from the budget currently. Wait for the next couple of slides. You're going to see exactly. I see where you're going with this, but you'll see why. Yes.
With that reserve, when's the last time you've actually used it for something outside that was not paid for by the reserve?
Not as far as since I've been here. Okay, I'd have to go back to check to see the exact time it was actually utilized. So now, going back to the.
I know reserves come up a lot, basically paying taxpayers' money. So in comparison to other districts, what's the norm? Because this does seem, compared to other ones I've looked at, relatively low.
It is one of the low ones, and when I get to the next couple of slides, you'll see exactly where we are with this. Same thing with the Evelyn Capital Reserve. The next thing is the assigned appropriated fund balance.
Could you just go over EBLR a little bit? Like
EBLR
what that is?
EBLR
Because
is,
that comes up a lot.
once again,
Yes.
employee benefits accrued liability reserve. When a person leaves the district through retirement or for any other reason, and they're paid out their sick time or their vacation time, it comes out through that reserve.
And what's like the recommended amount?
The recommended amount is our compensated absences, which is well over 1 million, I think 1.8 million, I think it was. I don't have that number in my head right
So
now.
we had a big payout and like we're replenishing it as we go.
We're attempting to replenish it. Yes.
With the money that we don't get from the state.
So that $874,850 line item is going to get increased.
No, I didn't say that.
You said you were going to pay out, so.
We paid out last year. Each year, we had a retirement incentive last year. We paid out certain money. I think it was up to 1.2 million, I think, as of last year. So we've actually decreased the use of it. And any retirements that occur this year will then come out of that reserve dollar for dollar.
I guess my question was, you don't have to put money back in there to get to the 1.2 figure. You said it was less.
It used to be 1.2. We took money out and didn't replenish enough to cover what we used last year. Once again, I do have a slide. I promise you guys. I'm not holding out on you guys, but I do have a slide.
It's an unusual year.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me get to the next slide that everybody's been harping for a while. So now, the reserves and fund balance history of the district. No. As I stated earlier, there is no TRS reserve. We'd love to be able to find one if the governor, not find one, TRS, Teachers Retirement District, Teacher Retirement System. Now, what happens is it's one of the ones you would like to have just to have when there's a big increase in the TRS percentage. So now, what I have here is the reserve fund balance history over the past few years since 2010. The reason why this is important, I want you to look at where we were back in 2010. The reserve fund balance was $6.7 million at that point, and decreased for a little while. And as you see, decreased, actually went up the first one. My fingers are too big for this thing, I apologize. Keep slipping on this. Slide we've been waiting for too, that's the fun thing. Okay. So now, we then went down to 1.6 million, 1.4, and you see it went down for a while, went up in 2015. If you notice, there was a trend that was going down for 3 years. What that basically means is you're utilizing more of your reserves than you're able to put back. At the end of the school year, what winds up happening is whatever's left over that wasn't expended in the budget or revenue-wise, additional revenue, gets put back into two places. One, we give back to the taxpayers the past few years $735,000. So when the budget's done and you look at it, you have to see that you have left over at least $735 to be able to give back to the taxpayers the following year. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing, once that's done, you have your appropriated fund balance, your fund balance, which is typically 4% of your following year budget. After you fund that amount, which we said before was 1.2 million, unassigned fund balance, which is 4% of the budget, anything above that typically goes back into the reserves. Okay? So now, what you see in the history over the past few years, we had a little time frame here where everything started decreasing, which meant you were using more of the reserves than you were putting back. The way I like to explain it is you have your savings account, and you're using your savings account to pay your mortgage. Okay? Each month you're taking the money out. If you don't put money back in, sooner or later that savings account is going to be zero. Okay? And if you notice now, we had an influx of money in 2016. That was my first year here where I applied for additional revenue that wasn't applied for, and we had a big increase in revenue that year, which was nice, as well as we had different expenses that came in less when we went to the workers' compensation cooperative, things along those lines. So we had, my first year here, a big increase in excess revenue. And I was able to carry us for a year. However, it goes back to the same pattern now after that. Last year, we went from 6.9 million down to 6.5 million, the number you saw before. Once again, that goes back to what you were talking about before, and I hope I get to it sooner or later. In regard to, we use more of the EBLR, we only put a portion of it back. We use more of the ERS, we only put a portion of it back. So we used more than we actually did. And what's happening is year to year, you have tighter and tighter budgets. So you're not having that excess to be able to put back. Now, this next year, we are anticipating the same pattern of using more of the reserves than being able to put back. Because you're having tighter and tighter budgets, you have all these additional expenses that are occurring during the years that you're trying to make up for, and because of that, you see the decrease for this year, and it's anticipated again. So when you look from 2010, a lot of the districts, you'll see, when you go back here, they're at 6.7 million. Down here, they're a lot higher now. They're actually higher than they were back then. We're actually lower, and one of the reasons, once again, is because we're using the reserves as much as we can each year, as well as giving back as much money back to the taxpayers as we can to fund the budget. And that's one of the things we've done in the past and we continue to do for this year. Excuse me?
Is that because of unanticipated expenses?
Sometimes, yes. Not sometimes.
What's happened in the last couple of years where you've been...
Additional special ed costs, additional security costs that were increased, and you'll see that in the capital portion of the budget for this year. Things along those lines. As well as when you have additional staff because of the needs of the students that you require that you didn't budget for because new students came in, or additional, all of a sudden you find out that they need additional service, either AIS, or once again, we'll go back to those 8 or 9 unfunded mandates that we were discussing earlier. All of a sudden you have those additional expenses that you have to account for. So where are we now for the revenue for 2019-20? Okay, unfortunately the first two are bad again. So but we've already discussed the property tax at 3.14 with the increase in the pilots. So now the next couple areas of the other revenue that we were discussing earlier. The first thing is the interest and penalties that we receive from the state. People don't pay their taxes on time. In North Merrick, we actually receive a little bit of an interest on it. So that's what that money is each year. So we do receive about $2,000 during the years for that. The next thing is tuition for other districts. Now this is the one where we have, you'll see a decrease of a certain amount of almost 57%. One of the reasons for that is we're a K-6 district. We have students that come in, okay, from other districts that they pay us a tuition for. Okay, when they graduate, the revenue comes out. Okay, we still have the same classes because they're one of 8 kids in a class or one of 12 kids in a class. So that revenue winds up coming out. So that's why you see the decrease in that, because right now we're anticipating 1 tuition-bearing student for next year. Okay. Health services for other districts. That's the progressive school. How many student kids that are going to progressive and other schools in North Merrick that are residents of other districts, we receive a fee for that. That's going up because we've seen an influx of kids coming in for that. Interest, you see a nice little increase in the interest. Last year we looked out at the banking of the district and found I was not happy with the old company we had. We weren't really receiving much interest at all. So I went out and looked at all the different ones, and we switched banks, and we're seeing a lot more revenue and interest for that because of that, which is nice. Rental real property, you'll see that's going up. Also, the rental real property is, during the summer, we rent out the parking lot for Merrick Woods next door. That's typically the $18,000. However, we're also receiving revenue from the after-school program for them housing it here for next year. Okay, as well as security. You see the security guards that are here, they also pay a portion of that they give to us. So dollar for dollar, unfortunately, the amount that we're spending extra for security, like you saw the security guard here tonight, they actually compensate us for that. So that's what that revenue is there. Other classified revenue, that is sometimes the insurance reimbursements that we'll receive from different claims. You'll see it's going down. E-rate is a system that we were receiving money from the state in regard to telecommunications, the wireless. The state's no longer doing that anymore. We're not receiving, no district is receiving that revenue anymore for that. So unfortunately, that is said and gone. It's been anticipated because they gradually eliminated it from the budget over the years. So now it's officially gone. And then you have Medicaid. The next avenue is state aid. Broken down into 3 areas. Number 1, state aid is all the non-expense driven state aid, foundation aid, and things along those lines. You'll see that we got a wonderful increase this year of $1,000. Okay, the governor's out there saying that with the 4% that people were getting, North America didn't get their share, a lot of other districts didn't get their share. It wasn't given there, so unfortunately it's only 0.3% increase. However, the debt service for the bond is starting to kick in gradually. This year and the next year it'll kick in even more. That's going up 53%. And one of the things we've been doing over the past 3 years is utilizing BOCES as much as possible, because BOCES we get about 50%, 50-60%, depending on the service, back from the state in regard to what we actually use. So we're trying to use BOCES as much as possible for that. So that's why you see the increase in BOCES of $69,000. So that's an increase of 3.04. Now the reserves, we were discussing earlier, the $30,000 for the employment reserve, $590 for the ERS reserve. That is the exact budget lines that we have that we're anticipating spending. So that's dollar for dollar. We can't spend any more from that as it is. And the debt fund, where it was helped last year, was $390. All that's left in the debt service fund for next year is $78,000. That's why you see the decrease of that. But that's also offset by the increase in the state aid. So you're looking at appropriate fund balance. We're looking to keep at $735. That, once again, is the money that we give back to the that the district gives back to the taxpayers. That's anticipated surplus from this year's budget.
Good question. I know some of these are offset by cost. Tuition, other districts, and health services to other districts as a revenue stream. The cost associated with bringing in students from other districts is similar, is less than the actual revenue, correct? So that is a revenue, true revenue.
It is a true revenue, because, but when the student also leaves, you still have the same exact expense. You still have the same teacher in there, because now there's 7 students instead of 8. Dr. Murphy does a wonderful job always looking for students to come in. So that is that aspect of it. So now, real quickly, it's running out of time. So the projected revenue, budget increase that we're kind of looking at this point right now is 1.89. We still don't know the total revenue we're anticipating receiving from the state, but right now that's what we're looking at is the 1.89. You had asked earlier in regard to the percentages, 71% of it comes basically from the property taxes.
We're discussing this, why do you have to give the taxpayers back $750? What if
If we,
why was this not collected in the first place?
Yeah, just.
okay. Well, one of the main reasons is because what happens is with the security, with the additional expenses that come in, that you have an avenue of additional revenue to be able to pay for those expenses. Perfect, like you'll see later on, there's a budget line this year for security for next year. $150,000 just for security, okay? That was not in fully last year. We expanded it more this year. So that's one of the things that we needed the excess money for this year, okay? Another avenue will wind up happening for this year is you saw that the revenue went down for the tuition. That happened beginning of the school year. So now we anticipated receiving additional revenue this year that we are not getting now. So that has to be made up somewhere. So by having that little bit of a cushion, if you want to say it that way, but it is given back as much as possible each year. The goal, if you go back to the plan, for me and the board, is to eliminate that, but you have to do it gradually, okay? Last year was 790. 2 years ago it was 790. Brought it down to 735. My goal is to, over the next 5 years, continue to bring that down as much as possible, okay? Slowly but surely. The goal is also to not utilize the reserves as much for the same reason, okay? So, but now, going back to what you were saying before, like why? We're at a negative last year, and we're anticipating being negative again this year, utilizing more of the reserves than we're replenishing. You know, you need to make sure that you have money to fund the budget for unanticipated expenses.
So that $735,000 is what you anticipate giving back to taxpayers?
735, yes.
Right, but if something happens over the summer, we get 15 new students coming into kindergarten, and we need to have them.
That's given back to the taxpayers no matter what.
And
Because is being allocated from this year's budget. Okay, we're anticipating having that left over this year to be able to give back to the budget.
every property owner in North Bergen gets a check regardless of income.
No, that's not a check. What happens is we're asking less of the taxpayers for the budget. So let's just say hypothetically that was not in there and was gone, and we still needed the same amount of revenue to fund the budget. That 735 would actually go to the tax levy. And in that situation would actually put us over the tax cap, okay? And then you would have to pierce the tax cap to get the supermajority vote for something like that. Okay? Okay, fine. So that's this. Okay, so facilities review of the budget. I'm going to try to go quick. Everything we've done here, the people that have been to the board meetings will listen to it at home. We've done wonderful things in regard to the facilities with the bond project. I'm going to try to fly through this a little bit instead of just speaking about it. The presentation is also in your hands as well as at home. You'll be able to get it online. All the different bond things between the windows, the boilers, the security vestibules that we did, the license scanners. We've done that in basically each of the buildings. I'm just trying to go through a little faster because of time. Okay. That's what we discussed before, what's in the capital portion of the budget. This is the line-by-line breakdown of it. It's pretty simple for this year, at least. We'll go through it. The first line is all the custodial salaries. You'll see a modest increase. The building equipment is also going up a little bit for next year. This is the big one here, security. It's an additional $45,000 of building to have the security guards here. It wasn't in the budget last year. That's why you see it as a new line this year. So that's a major increase in the budget. Just let me finish. I want to try to get through this now because we're running a little bit late. I'll answer the questions. Other services is all the contract services that are required to run the facilities. But one of the big things for this, the reason why you see an increase every 5 years, we have to do a building survey for the state, and the bulk of that increase is for that. I think it's between $8,000 and $9,000 just for a survey. One of the unfunded mandates we were discussing earlier, that's another one I didn't put on the list. I figured discuss it now, that the state requires us to do, that our architect has to look at all facilities and then report back to the state on it. And once again, that's a cost that's associated with that. Next thing, fuel. You'll see that the fuel is going down substantially for next year. The budget over the past 2 years have gone down substantially. One of the main reasons we switched over to gas. We're keeping enough money in the fuel code for next year to basically fill up the boilers at least once for the year. Then you'll see you're going to see a lot of red in the facilities department. One of the main things, because of the great boilers that we basically instituted, they're more efficient. So what happens is now for next year for the gas, you're seeing that the gas is also going down, $17,000 Electricity is also going down a little bit because we're being more efficient in regard to what we do. Adding up all that stuff there, if you add it up real quick, it's over $100,000 just in cuts in utilities. Okay, so that's a substantial amount of expenses coming out of the budget for a budget that's only $30 million. Water is going up a little bit in camp, just based upon expenses, and telephone coverage is going down. We've been able to get cheaper rates. We'll go with that. Next item is the general cleaning supplies, which is staying in line with what we've been using for the past few years. The increase in non-consumable supplies, the reason for that increase, it's additional new floor scrubbers for each of the schools. We're having a hard time now keeping them clean with the old machines that are breaking down all the time. That's one of the main reasons for that increase in that. As well as air conditions. We've purchased a few air conditions over the years just to be replaced. That's that cost. The reason why I bring that up, you see the electrical supplies. They're going up in expenses for that in regard to the additional air conditions that are in the schools. And I know I'm going fast, I'm just trying to go through it. Next thing is the buildings and grounds maintenance. These are the guys that are outside working day in and day out. The cost for all that is all going up. Contractually, building repairs staying about the same. And you see mostly everything's staying within normal. The one you'll see, building repair supplies are going up. It's just a lot of repairs being done. It's just being, as you see, it's been underfunded the past few years. So, let me get back to you on that. I can't think right now. I apologize. And then the next area is just in regard to the benefits associated with everyone in the buildings and grounds. The ERS, which is, once again, the employee retirement system. There's no teachers. A slight increase in Social Security due to salaries. Workers' comp is going up about 7% because we've had additional instances over the past year as compared to other years, so our rating has gone up a little bit. One of the good things about, I discussed earlier, a couple years ago going into the Nassau County Cooperative, if we weren't in the cooperative with the rating that we have, our rates would be a lot higher, which is good. So we're seeing a savings in regard to that each year. Then the dental and insurance, and then the serial bond comes out of here, which is the bond. It's going up a little bit. The principal is going up 25, and the other one, interest is going down 27. The last thing you see here is the TAN, and the reason why you see such a substantial increase in regard to that is we're anticipating going after the smart bond next year, and we have to lay out the money first before they give it to us. So we're not going to have the cash flow available to do that, as well as we might have to go out for a TAN next year just for regular cash flow, which, as you see from the chart from the reserves, going down each of the past few years, and if it continues to go down, that's our cash flow, how we run it each before we receive the tax bill. Thank you. Try to get by on that one. TAN is not sitting on the beach. It is basically tax anticipation note.
Mr. McDaid,
Yes, ma'am.
5 minute warning, okay?
Excuse me?
Sorry,
5-minute warning.
5 minute warning, I'm sorry. And this is great conversation, and I definitely want to encourage it. I do really appreciate this, it's been extremely collaborative, so I'm very glad we're doing it at 2 extra sessions. Right?
And this is one of the reasons why for that next session, 2 weeks, we'll be able to.
People have more questions and open dialogue.
We're running a little late for the public meeting, so.
Okay, so I'll be real, not even 5 minutes. You can.
Definitely not, one.
Upcoming facility projects, you'll see what we're planning on doing for the next year. That was it.
Mr. McDaid?
Yes.
I have a question just going back to
Yeah.
the health insurance. Is
Yes.
the 7% increase what we should expect to see for all district employees in the budget?
That is also, it's not only the increase in the percentage for the policies itself, but also increase in enrollment. We're hiring more people, so more
But
people.
roughly 7%, we would expect to see in March when we get to the program and administrative portion of the budget.
No, because it's all allocated by who is in this one. So in the sense of, hypothetically, you have 50 or 60 people that are associated in the capital portion of it. However, in the program portion of it, you have maybe more teachers or more people going into it, so they would actually be a little bit higher at that point. But it'll be around that number.
Okay, the program portion would be higher than 7%.
It could be a little bit. But having nothing, yeah, yes. I'm sorry, Miss, the guy in the white shirt. I know I stopped you before, so I just want to make sure that I got back to you. You had a question?